Steve Moore joins us, Douglas Holtz-Eakin with us as well. Doug, ended with you. You're a former congressional budget director. You know the money that comes in, you know the money that comes out. A lot of people curse the energy industry for making money right now. Of course, it hasn't always been that way. But that's revenue that makes it to Uncle Sam. So in a flip sense, the money that's coming in for the oil companies is money that's going out to Washington to help with the very spending many in the White House want to push. So it is a weird kind of a conundrum, is it not?
Yeah, I think that if you take apart the arguments we've heard in the past couple of days, they don't really hang together in an economic sense. Oil companies do have an incentive to produce. I think there's no question about that. There's a lot of things that are in the way of producing from a regulatory standpoint, and certainly the stance of the White House from the beginning of this administration. And right now, tax revenue is booming. And, the notion that somehow these oil companies need to, quote, pay their fair share, they lost buckets of money in 2020. They made some money last year, and they're making more money this year, and they're paying more taxes as a result. So I don't really think this is anything other than, something we've seen before, an administration demonizing the oil companies at a moment of political heat. And it's not particularly imaginative, and it's not going to solve any problems. And we've seen this movie before.
We have seen it before, and I should point out that as gargantuan as these profits seem to be as a percent of revenues, another way you can look at it, energy companies are actually in the middle of the pack of companies and the profits they're recording. Having said that, Steve Moore, I mean, one of the issues that keeps coming up is if the attitude in Washington, let's say you're an oil company, and the attitude in Washington, whatever flexibility they're hoping to get out of these talks, if anything comes of them, is to produce more oil. But the environment in Washington right now is they don't like the guys who produce oil. They don't really like fossil fuels. We heard that from John Kerry, who said the idea of drilling in this environment was ridiculous. I'm paraphrasing here. But if that's the attitude, it's sort of like going to a party where you were accidentally invited. You're not going to have a good time, and you're going to want to leave. And I'm just wondering if people forget that you're not going to coax the oil companies to do what you like when it's pretty clear you don't like them, period. What do you think?
Well, exactly. I mean, have people forgotten about that famous debate between Trump and Biden? Remember that one, the second debate that they had, where Donald Trump asked Joe Biden, what is your intention on the oil companies? And he said he wanted to effectively, I forget the term he used, and basically destroy the oil and gas industry. He appointed a person, luckily she was not confirmed, that basically said that she wanted to bankrupt the oil and gas industry. So who wants to invest in a company, in an industry, when you have a president who is extraordinarily hostile? I mean, I find it remarkable, I really do, that Joe Biden is now pleading with the oil and gas industry to increase their output, when all he's been saying over the last 2 years is how damaging oil and gas is, because of the climate change fanaticism of his administration. I will tell you this, having worked for Donald Trump, he was all in on American oil and gas. I do believe we'd be producing about 3 million more barrels a day if Trump were in office rather than Biden. That's a lot of money. That's $500 million a day. $500 million a day, roughly, we're losing because of the Biden war on American energy.
Doug, the one thing that's pretty clear is that some progressives are pushing to punish the energy companies if they don't do more. In fact, whether they do more or not, I get a feeling, certainly from Senator Bernie Sanders, that if he had it his way, he'd slap a windfall profits tax on these companies. Now, regardless of how you feel about oil companies, you start calling whatever the level is that you think is appropriate for a company to make. Just be careful, because it could be technology next. It could be healthcare companies that have been making a lot of money through the COVID situation and the pandemic. So I'm just wondering, the revenue that a lot of progressives think they're going to get from this, because it's more than just punishment, it's a chance to dig up some more revenue for the things they want to do. Where do you see this going?
Well, we've actually seen this before, Neil. In 1980, we passed a windfall profits tax on the oil companies, and the revenue never materialized. Oil prices didn't go down, and what we lost was a lot of supply, 6 to 8% by some estimates. So if your issue is high oil prices, you need more supply Taxes don't generate more supply. The economic logic is backwards. If you like to punish people with higher taxes, and let's face it, that is part of the progressive agenda. They're happy to raise taxes on large American companies, happy to raise taxes on affluent Americans, even if the only point is to hurt them. Then sure, that's part of their agenda. But that's not going to solve the problem of the average American who's going to the pump and spending $100 to fill their car, and it's not going to get them reelected. So they need to start focusing on some actual solutions, which mean increasing supply. And if you have a high price problem, the solution is always more supply. And for that, you need to stop demonizing industries. You got to lower the regulatory barrier. I mean, I think one of the things that's not being noticed about this administration is that they had the largest regulatory bill, $200 billion of regulatory costs imposed on American businesses in their first year. That's double the pace of the Obama administration, which was one of the most intrusive regulators we've ever seen. So they are not laying the groundwork for firms to succeed. They're doing the opposite. And we're seeing the result.
Gentlemen, I want to thank you both very, very much.